All right, so welcome back for another deep dive. We're picking up with Dante's Inferno, and yeah, things are about to get a lot more intense.
Definitely a lot darker from here on out.
Remember last time, like where we left off? Dante was like totally freaking out at the edge of the woods, like frozen with fear.
Yeah, those beasts, representing sin, had him totally cornered.
Right, and he was lost, like literally and figuratively, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So then Beatrice, his lifelong love shows up with Virgil the Roman poet to guide him through hell.
The OG influencer.
But Canto 2 ended with this like super ominous ship day to night, and that's definitely not a good sign.
Not a good sign at all. It really sets the stage for what we're about to see in Canto 3, like the actual entrance to hell.
Oh man. Okay, so before we get too far, let's just start with those opening lines of Canto 3. Set the mood. Through me you pass into the city of woe. Through me you pass into eternal pain. Through me among the people lost for aye.
It's chilling.
Right.
It really is Dante just establishing like the gravity of what's about to happen and that repetition, hammering home the idea that there's no turning back.
Yeah, like who talks like that besides like, terrifying gatekeepers of the underworld? But seriously, it's like Dante's trying to warn us, that we're like entering a place of no return.
Exactly. And then it gets even scarier with that inscription over the gates of hell, abandon all hope ye who enter here.
Ugh, that line, talk about a buzzkill, right?
Right.
But it also makes me wonder, is he saying that like there's no hope at all in hell, or is he hinting at like a deeper kind of hope that we're going to discover with him?
That's a good question, and I think it's something that Dante wants us to like really wrestle with, is hope just about avoiding punishment, or is there something more?
So they pass through the gates, and Dante's just like bombarded with these like sensory details. It's not just about what he sees, but what he hears. He talks about this chaotic symphony of like wails of woe, accents of anger, and voices that are both deep and hoarse and shrill.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to create an emotional landscape with like pulling us right into hell and making us feel the suffering and not just like telling us about it.
The visuals too, he talks about this like oppressive darkness, this thick fog, like all the hope has been literally sucked out of the air. It's almost claustrophobic.
It is, and the darkness isn't just like physical. It represents the spiritual state of hell, like the absence of God's light.
Whoa, okay, and then there's the first group of souls we meet, the indifferent souls.
Right, the neutral souls.
These are the folks who, in life, never really committed to anything good or evil. They just kind of floated along.
And their punishment, it's kind of interesting. They're chasing this blank banner eternally while being stung by wasps and hornets.
I don't know why, but that image of them like running around naked and being stung, it's kind of funny in like a morbid way.
Well, Dante does have that kind of dark humor, but it's also like a commentary on apathy. Sex, they represent that constant sting of guilt and regret.
Right.
The emptiness of a life without purpose.
So basically, even choosing not to choose is a choice, and it comes with its own set of consequences. It's like that saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
That's a good one.
So they're making their way through this chaotic landscape, and they come to the banks of the river Charon. That river in Greek mythology that separates the world of the living from the dead.
Classic.
Right. Dante was clearly a fan of the classics. He was like weaving together this Christian and pagan imagery to create this really rich and layered picture of hell. And speaking of classic figures, who's waiting for them at the river? None other than Charon, the ferryman of the dead.
He's usually depicted as this like old grizzled guy, piercing eyes and a shaggy beard, just like Dante describes.
And he is not happy to see Dante,
Nope.
a living soul trying to cross over, and yells at him, saying something like, "Woe to you, wicked souls, hope not ever to see the sky again." Can you blame the guy?
Right?
It's not every day he gets a visitor that's still breathing.
Right, but Virgil steps in and it's like, hey, Charon, relax. Dante's got a divine mission. Even you have to respect that.
So basically just name-dropping God to get a free pass across the river Styx.
Pretty much.
Pretty slick Virgil, I gotta say. But how does Charon react to that?
Well, he's not happy. Dante describes these wheeling flames around Charon's eyes. Death glare, but he eventually backs down.
So Charon, like, grudgingly agrees to ferry Dante across the Charon, but the scene on the shore is total chaos. All the souls are like wailing and crying out, terrified of crossing over. Dante even compares them to like autumnal leaves falling from a tree.
It's a powerful image, that simile of the falling leaves. It really shows their powerlessness. Like they can't escape their fate.
Right. And as they're crossing the river, Virgil explains to Dante that like anyone who dies outside of God's grace ends up here no matter where they're from or what they did. This is like universal concept of hell.
What a ride.
What a ride.
So we made it across the Acheron, left the land of the living behind, and we're like officially in the realm of the damned. And what really gets me is like how Dante just throws us right into the consequences of sin.
Oh, yeah, it's not all like fire and brimstone, at least not yet. But the atmosphere, the sounds, the despair, it's all so like in your face.
Exactly, and it brings us to this idea of divine justice, which is kind of woven throughout Canto 3.
I'm curious about that. I always thought of hell as this like chaotic random place where everyone just suffers forever.
Right.
But Dante's suggesting something more like structured, a kind of cosmic order to it.
Yeah, he is. Remember those indifferent souls, those that are chasing the banner and getting stung by insects?
Oh, yeah.
That's a perfect example of what Dante calls contrapasso.
Contrapasso.
Yeah, the idea that the punishment fits the crime, or in this case, like the lack of conviction.
So like their punishment is a reflection of their lives, always running but never getting anywhere.
Right.
It's like they're trapped in this like endless cycle of indecision, even in the afterlife. It's kind of brilliant and terrifying at the same time.
It is. Dante's making us think about, the weight of our choices, or the lack of them. What we do or don't do has consequences.
But isn't that a little like simplistic? I mean, boiling sin down to just a formula? Don't things like motivation and circumstance play a role too? What if someone made bad choices because they were desperate or tricked? Does that really mean they deserve eternal damnation?
That's a great question. It gets at that big philosophical debate about free will versus determinism. But for Dante, it seems like the ultimate sin is the failure to choose.
So even choosing not to choose is a choice. I'm starting to see how complex this is.
And remember, this is just the beginning of Dante's journey. Still figuring out his own understanding of divine justice. We'll see his perspective evolve as we go deeper into the Inferno.
It makes you think, what if my own dark wood is my fear of making the wrong choices? What if I'm letting indecision paralyze me?
It's a big question, and I think that's what's so amazing about Dante. He's not just writing about some abstract idea of hell. He's asking us to confront our own inner darkness, our own struggles with sin and redemption.
Okay, so let's get back to Canto 3. There's another part of this divine justice thing that I find interesting. The role of Charon.
Right.
He's not just some ferryman. He's like this gatekeeper, this judge who decides who gets to cross and who doesn't.
Absolutely. And remember, he doesn't want to ferry Dante across at first because he's still alive. But Virgil's all like, no, Dante's on a divine mission. You got to let him through. It's like a reminder that even Charon, this ancient symbol of death, has to answer to a higher power.
So even in hell, there's a hierarchy, a cosmic order. And it makes me think about free will. Like if even Charon has to follow orders, does anyone in hell actually have a choice?
That's a great question. It gets to the core of what Dante's exploring, divine will versus human agency. Are we really free to make our own choices, or are we all just pawns in some big cosmic game?
Man, this is heavy stuff. But it's also like really thought-provoking. Like Dante's making us question everything we think we know about good and evil and how our lives are shaped.
Exactly. And don't forget, Dante's on a journey. He's not coming in with all the answers. He's figuring things out as he goes with Virgil and with us, the readers.
So speaking of tough questions, Dante seems to be having a hard time with feeling sorry for the damned souls, especially when he sees them crying and wailing by the river. It's honestly a pretty sad scene.
It is, but remember what Virgil tells him. Don't waste your pity on them. They made their choices, and now they have to deal with the consequences. It's harsh, but it's a reminder that there needs to be balance between compassion and justice.
I see what you mean. It's not about being cold-hearted. It's about understanding that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are tough to see.
Exactly. And I think this back and forth between pity and justice is going to keep coming up as we go through the Inferno. As we meet more of the damned and hear their stories, it's going to challenge us to really think about our own feelings of compassion and judgment.
Wow, we really went deep on Canto 3 there. It's been a crazy ride.
It has, and we've barely scratched the surface of Dante's Inferno, but even in this one canto, there's so much meaning, so many things to think about.
I know, right? Dante packed this canto with symbolism and foreshadowing. It's like a blueprint for the rest of the journey.
That's a good way to put it, a blueprint for hell. So as we go forward, what are some key takeaways that we should keep in mind?
Well, that inscription over the gates of hell, abandon all hope ye who enter here, that one really stuck with me. It's like this harsh reminder about sin and what happens because of it. But I'm still thinking about what it means for hope. Is there any hope in hell at all?
Yeah.
Or is Dante making us rethink what hope even is?
That's a question that's going to stay with us as we get further into the Inferno. Do you wonder if there's a deeper kind of hope, one that goes beyond punishment and reward?
And those indifferent souls and their punishment, it's kind of funny, but also sad.
It is. It was like Dante is showing us our own modern obsession. Imagine someone like constantly scrolling on social media, trying to feel validated, but never finding it, always chasing trends and empty promises.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the indifferent soul's punishment is all about.
So he's like warning us about being apathetic, about living a life without purpose or believing in something.
Yeah, we can't just float along and let life happen to us. We have to make choices, even when those choices are hard or scary.
And those choices have consequences both in this life and, according to Dante, in the afterlife.
Speaking of consequences, Charon, the ferryman of the dead, he's like a big reminder that death and judgment are going to come for us all.
Yeah, that scene where he confronts Dante at the river is so intense.
Right.
You can really feel his power.
But even he has to answer to a higher power.
Right, which brings up all these questions about free will. Are we really in control of our own fate?
It's crazy.
And then there's that feeling of fear that's everywhere in this canto. I mean, Dante is terrified and he's not hiding it.
And that's what makes him such a relatable character. He's not some hero, just a regular person facing the ultimate unknown, and his fear is contagious.
Yeah, I gotta admit, there were times when I felt that fear too. I was right there with Dante crossing the Acheron into the land of the damned.
That's the power of Dante's writing. He pulls you into this experience.
Right.
Makes you feel the weight of sin, the terror of the unknown, and that desire for redemption.
So basically, Canto 3 sets the stage for everything that comes next. We've seen the gates of hell. We got a glimpse of the punishments. We felt how heavy sin is. And we thought about questions of hope, justice, and what it all means.
I want you to think about this. Given the punishments Dante describes and the choices these souls made, what do you think your personal dark wood might be?
Ooh, that's a question I'm going to be thinking about for a while. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and get ready for the next episode where we'll go even deeper into Dante's Inferno.